They say your home is your sanctuary, but in the quiet town of Normal, Illinois, a red balloon proved that nowhere is safe. I was 8 years old, alone, and watching the TV fade into static when a message floated through my window. I'm coming to get you. Most clowns make children laugh, but this one, he wasn't there to play. He was there to hunt. I was 8 years old when it happened in a quiet neighborhood of Normal, Illinois, a small town on a street where nothing ever really happened. It was an early autumn afternoon. My mom had gone out to run what she called a quick errand and told me I would be fine on my own for a little while. I remember sitting on the living room floor with a bowl of cereal, watching cartoons while the rain gently tapped against the windows. The house felt unusually quiet, and the gray light outside made everything feel dull and flat. At some point, the TV screen glitched, the image froze, the sound turned into static, and then the screen went black. I just sat there staring at it, waiting for it to turn back on. That's when something red floated past the living room window. At first, I thought it was just a reflection from a passing car or something outside, but it passed by again, slower this time. It was a red balloon. It moved from left to right just outside the glass, swaying slightly in the rain. That's when I noticed the living room window wasn't completely closed. It was open just enough to let the rain in. I remember feeling confused because I hadn't opened it, and I was sure my mom had closed all the windows before leaving. Before I could decide what to do, the balloon drifted inside. It slipped through the opening and floated gently into the room. A thin white string was attached to it, and something small hung at the end. A folded piece of paper that looked like a note. I slowly stood up and walked toward it. My heart was already beating faster, even though I didn't yet understand why. I detached the paper and unfolded it with trembling fingers. There were only 5 words written on it. I'm coming to get you. I stared at the note for a long time, trying to understand it. I told myself the balloon must have escaped from a nearby birthday party. Suddenly, I heard a tapping sound. It was coming from the front door. At first, it was soft, but it quickly turned into a scraping noise, like someone scratching our front door with their fingernails. I stood there, alone in the house. When I couldn't stand the suspense anymore, I shouted, "Who's there?" The scratching stopped, and footsteps moved away from the door. I stared at it, thinking the person on the other side would knock next, but nothing happened. I sighed in relief, telling myself it was probably just a cat or a raccoon. Then a soft voice called out to me from the half-open window. As a kid, I slowly turned around and saw a man dressed as Pennywise staring in through the glass. His face looked broken, like it was made of dry, cracked stone, the paint peeling into his skin. Dark red lines ran from his eyes like blood, and his nose was wet and shiny. His yellow, furious eyes stared straight into mine, like he knew my name. He smiled slowly, unnaturally, as if his mouth wasn't meant to move that way, and I felt that if I blinked, he would be in my bedroom. "I have a surprise for you," he said, mimicking a clown's voice. I couldn't wait. I just ran. I threw myself behind the couch, curled into a ball, hands over my mouth to keep from screaming. I heard the window slide open completely. The wet, spongy sound of shoes hitting the floor echoed through the house. He moved through the house, humming Itsy Bitsy Spider. At that moment, I prayed for my mom to come home. The man tried the hallway door. It was locked. He tried the bathroom door. It was locked too. Then I heard him walking toward the back of the house. I heard the back door handle rattle. I heard him whisper something I couldn't understand. A shadow passed under the living room door. My heart was pounding so hard I thought he could hear it. I stayed perfectly still. Then the front door handle turned. At the same moment, headlights shone through the living room windows. A car pulled into the driveway, and I heard my mom's voice outside. She screamed. The footsteps stopped. I heard sudden movement. The man ran away, slamming the back door so hard the glass cracked and then shattered into pieces. Then everything went quiet. My mom burst in seconds later. She found me crying in the corner behind the couch. I could barely speak. She immediately called the police and told them she had seen a clown running away from the back of the house. The police searched the area. They found nothing that night. A few days later, they came back. They told my mom that our quiet neighbor next door had been taken in for questioning. They found handmade clown costumes in his garage, along with various makeup and masks. The police also discovered photos taken inside other people's houses. The man was obsessed with clowns and enjoyed scaring unsupervised children for fun. He confessed, claiming it was just a joke, but breaking into someone's house while their child is home alone is not funny. It's been 15 years since that night, but I still remember the sound of his footsteps. I still remember the way he hummed that night. That neighbor taught me that monsters live next door, but what happened years later in Colorado proved that some nightmares actually follow you. Before I reveal the second encounter, drop a like and subscribe if you've ever felt like you were being watched. I was 24 years old and living in Boulder, Colorado. My house was on a quiet residential street, about 15 minutes from Pearl Street, where my friend Betsy lived. It was a Saturday night, and I was walking home from his birthday party, drunk and exhausted. The night was cool and clear, and the streets were almost completely empty. Most of the houses were dark, and the few porch lights that were on cast yellow halos onto the sidewalks. I remember feeling relaxed and safe, which is embarrassing to admit now. I had my phone in my hand, scrolling through messages as I walked, when I noticed a porch light flickering on the left side of the street in the distance. It blinked rapidly and irregularly, like it was about to burn out. The light would go out for a second, then suddenly turn back on. Every time it did, I thought I saw a figure standing beneath it. At first, I told myself it was just my eyes adjusting to the darkness and the alcohol, but the silhouette persisted. As I got closer, the light stopped flickering and stayed on. I realized I wasn't imagining it. There really was a man standing underneath it. He stood perfectly still, staring up at the bulb as if he was studying it or waiting for it to change again. His face was painted with a sad, drooping expression, white skin, a red nose, and a blue mouth curved downward, frozen mid-sob. He wore a crooked hat and a dirty green shirt under a torn coat, and he looked older than me. The entire scene felt strange in a way I couldn't explain, but I refused to acknowledge it. I didn't want to be the kind of person who panics over nothing. I told myself he was probably a street performer heading home after a show. I kept walking. As soon as I passed the house, I heard footsteps behind me. They were slow and careful, like someone trying not to be heard. The sound was faint, but on the silent street, it was impossible to ignore. I turned around, expecting to see the clown behind me, but there was no one there. The porch light behind me was still on, and the sidewalk was empty. An owl swooped overhead, hooting, nearly giving me a heart attack. I felt a spike of anxiety, but I told myself I was imagining things. I kept walking. Suddenly, I heard footsteps again, this time coming from ahead of me. I looked up, and it was him, the sad clown. He was standing near a stop sign on the opposite sidewalk, facing me as if ready to approach at any moment. Cold sweat ran down my forehead. He didn't move, though. He just stood there, staring at me. I stared back, breathing heavily, but he didn't react. He simply stood there. I swallowed and started walking again. He started walking too. I stopped. He stopped. I paused for a second, then sped up, and so did he. This clown wasn't just following me. He was mimicking me. He never crossed the street. He mirrored my movements perfectly, like my reflection. I laughed nervously and told myself it was a coincidence, but my hands started to shake. "Dude, don't you have anything better to do?" He didn't answer. He just giggled, like I had said something funny. I yelled in frustration, "Seriously, are you stupid or what?" He giggled again, like a 6-year-old laughing at toilet jokes. I walked faster. He walked faster too. Every time I slowed down, he did the same. My heart pounded harder with every step. I tried to hide my fear, but my face betrayed me. For 15 minutes, he kept up this routine without ever crossing the street. When I reached my neighborhood, my stomach twisted and a terrible realization hit me. My house was on the same side of the street as him. That meant I had to cross. Was that why he'd followed me all this time? The thought sent chills through me. I stepped off the sidewalk. That's when he changed. He dropped to all fours, not suddenly, not aggressively, slowly, like he had planned it from the beginning. His body bent backward, not forward. His spine faced the sky. His spine arched in a way no humans should. His upside-down face stared at me as he crawled, like a spider trapped in a human body. I screamed and ran as fast as I could. He chased me in that twisted way, sobbing like he was in unbearable pain. His crying voice sounded like something straight out of a horror movie. Even bent backward, he was moving too fast. I knew that if I tripped or slowed down, he would catch me. I ran without stopping until I reached my porch, fumbling with the lock. I dropped my keys. I picked them up. I looked back to check the distance and saw him standing up. I shoved the door, convinced he was about to sprint at me. The door barely unlocked when I heard his voice scream into the night, "You shouldn't walk home alone." I collapsed against the door and called the police with a trembling hand. The cops searched the neighborhood, but found no one matching the description of the clown. Later, my neighbors told me I wasn't the first victim. They said multiple people had reported a man dressed as a sad clown who followed pedestrians late at night. I moved away without ever finding out if he was caught, but to this day, I never walk home alone at night. I've never told this story without feeling uneasy, because even years later, it still gives me chills in a way I can't explain. I was 12 years old when it happened, and I was old enough to know when something was wrong, even if I couldn't explain it. Why? Because what I saw that night didn't chase me, threaten me, or even touch me. It simply watched me, and that was worse than anything I could have imagined. It all started in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, near my cousin's place, on the outskirts of a small town called Strasburg. My cousin Trevor lived deep in the countryside where the roads had no sidewalks and the fields stretched endlessly in every direction. That night, a small traveling fair had set up on a dusty lot near Route 741. Nothing special, just a Ferris wheel, a few carnival games, and food stands that smelled like grease and sugar. I spent the evening stuffing myself with junk food, cotton candy, donuts, fries, soda. Anything my aunt was willing to buy me. Trevor kept running off to play ring toss and shoot basketballs into crooked hoops. I stayed near the food stands, feeling full and content. I was debating whether getting on the Ferris wheel with a stomach full of junk food was a good idea when my eyes caught a single yellow lamp near the edge of the trees. There was a woman dressed as a clown beneath it. She had a pale white face with black star-shaped makeup around her eyes, hollow, unblinking eyes, and a small red nose. Her mouth was painted into an exaggerated red smile. Her hair was tied up in high pigtails, and she wore a black and white striped outfit with a bow. She wasn't entertaining anyone. She was just standing there, slowly moving her hands as if she were trapped behind an invisible pane of glass, pushing and pulling at nothing. People walked past her without reacting, as if she didn't even exist. I watched her for a moment because it felt strange. Then she stopped. Slowly, she turned her head and stared directly into my eyes. Her eyes were dark and fixed, and they didn't blink. She raised her hand and gave me a slow wave. It felt awkward not to respond, so I lifted my hand and waved back. She waved again. I waved again. Then she waved a third time, slower, her fingers curling inward, beckoning me. That's when the feeling in my stomach changed. She just kept waving. I lowered my hand and turned away. I found Trevor and tugged on his sleeve. I whispered, "There's this creepy clown over there. She keeps waving at me." Trevor frowned and looked where I was pointing. Where? I looked too, but there was no one there. Just the streetlight illuminating an empty patch of ground near the trees. We were about to leave, and I thought she must have gone. About 20 minutes later, my stomach finally gave up. I felt like I was going to throw up, and there was no way I was doing that at the fair. So I told Trevor I was heading back to his house. It was barely a 10-minute walk down a quiet country road. The sounds of the fair faded behind me as I walked. Crickets chirped in the grass. A light breeze moved through the cornfields. The place felt so isolated that I didn't even see a single car pass. I was walking calmly, thinking about my terrible food choices at the fair, when I heard a whistle. It came from my left, and I saw her again. She was standing under a streetlight at the side of the road. My heart jumped. How did she know I'd be here? I slowed down. She stared at me, then raised her hand and waved the same way she had before. I didn't want to panic, but every part of my body was screaming that something was wrong with this woman. This time, I didn't wave back. I just sped up and walked past her. I could feel her eyes on me as I left her behind. A few seconds later, I looked back, and she was gone. I kept walking, a little faster now. A moment later, I checked again to see if she was following me. Nothing. Then I heard a second whistle, this time from my right. That sick feeling returned. I looked up. She was there again, standing at the edge of the road, waving with that lifeless stare. I started running. I looked back, and she was gone. But seconds later, she appeared again at the side of the road. Every time I saw her, she was under the next streetlight, closer than before, always waving, never making a sound. It was like she wasn't walking at all, like she was skipping through space itself. I have no idea how she did it. It was like an endless nightmare. I'd see her, she'd wave, then disappear, only to reappear with that unsettling whistle and wave again. That's when I realized the terrible mistake I had made by interacting with her at all. When I finally saw Trevor's house at the end of the road, I sprinted. I burst inside and slammed the door shut, locking it with shaking hands. My aunt and uncle jumped up in alarm. "There's a woman dressed as a clown outside," I stammered. She followed me from the fair. She keeps appearing like a ghost." They exchanged a look. My uncle grabbed a flashlight and went outside, but he didn't see anyone. The next day, they asked around at the fair. No one had seen a clown matching my description. The organizers claimed they hadn't hired any performers at all. No one believed me, except myself. I remember hiding under my blankets for the next 2 days. I didn't leave my room, and I also had severe diarrhea. But more than the stomach pain, I was terrified that the clown would appear in my room at night. She could show up at any time. Since that day, I stay far away from clowns.